collaborate with the private sector to ensure our rail network and our ports resume their rightful place in promoting trade and economic growth. The roadmap for the freight logistics system in our country clarifies that strategic infrastructure, such as rail lines and ports, will remain in public ownership as assets belonging to the South African people. At the same time, it paves the way for greater competition and rail and port terminal operations, which will attract private investment and improve our infrastructure to world-class standards. In this context, I believe that the efficiency of the logistics system is integral to the functioning of all economies. Today, I am launching an online request for information to develop an enabling environment for private sector participation and enhanced investment in rail and port infrastructure and operations. As you are all aware, South Africa's rail and port infrastructure faces substantial challenges, including declining performance, vandalism and theft, underinvestment, and operational inefficiencies. All of these currently hinder trade and economic growth. The limited availability of state resources to fund infrastructure development and address backlogs has intensified these challenges, severely restricting the ability of state-owned enterprises to fulfill their mandate. Together with Transnet, government has received numerous unsolicited proposals from the private sector, offering investment, skills, and expertise to support the rehabilitation and reform of our struggling rail and port systems. This overwhelming interest has made it clear to the Department and Transnet that we must engage in broad and inclusive market research before issuing requests for proposals in August this year. These are not formal procurement processes in themselves, but a mechanism to understand and source information from the market. To ensure that future requests for proposals are well responded to, government recognizes the importance of understanding the freight logistics landscape through the perspective of interested and affected parties, so that our solutions are both effective and sustainable. In this initial phase of private sector participation, the request for information will focus on the following corridors: Northern Cape to Saldanha, bulk mineral corridor, primarily for iron ore and manganese exports, and the Northern Cape to Nelson Mandela corridor, primarily for manganese exports. This includes the complete pit to port rail, port terminal infrastructure and equipment supporting the transport of iron ore from mines in the greater Sishen-Postmasburg region to the port of Saldanha, as well as the movement of manganese from mines located between Hotazel and Postmasburg to the port of Saldanha and to the ports of Port Elizabeth and Ngqoga in Nelson Mandela Bay, and the back of port arrangements. Secondly, Limpopo and Mpumalanga to Richards Bay bulk minerals corridor, PSP project for coal and chrome exports, including provision for magnetite exports at the port. This includes the full pit-to-port rail, port, and terminal infrastructure and equipment supporting coal exports from the mines in Lephalale, Limpopo, chrome exports from the Western Limb mines in the Rustenburg Brits region in northwest, and coal exports from various mines across Mpumalanga and KwaZulu-Natal to the port of Richards Bay. Particular attention is given to the Bayview precinct, where non-Richards Bay coal terminal coal, chrome and magnetite are handled through the dry bulk and multi-purpose terminals and the back of port arrangements. Thirdly, intermodal supply chain PSP project focused on the container and automotive sectors, including the potential designation of the South African container port system as a regional transshipment hub for major shipping lines. This includes the port and container and automotive port terminals, back of port arrangements and railway and inland terminals for the Gauteng Durban port in KZN, Gauteng Eastern Cape, including East London, Port Elizabeth, and Ngqura, and Gauteng Western Cape, including the Port of Cape Town corridors. The RFI represents a pivotal step forward in our shared commitment to building a 21st century transport system that goes beyond mobility to strengthen industrial competitiveness, deepen regional integration, and drive inclusive economic growth. It will enable us to articulate the challenges in a structured and coherent way, clearly defining their scope, context, and impact to inform the development of focused, strategic, and sustainable solutions. In this regard, the Department of Transport will ensure that the views of other stakeholders are brought into the deliberations, including those of organized labor. In line with the private sector participation envisaged in the White Paper on National Rail Policy, Cabinet approved the formation of a private sector participation framework in 2023 to guide private sector involvement across the logistics value chain. The framework mandates the Department of Transport to establish a dedicated PSP unit to enhance state capacity and provide support to Transnet and PRASA in the procurement of potential PSP projects. The department is in the final stages of concluding a memorandum of understanding with the Development Bank of South Africa and National Treasury, appointing the DBSA as the hosting institution for this PSP unit. We have set up an interim unit within the department comprising a team with extensive experience in launching PSP contracts and procurement. In collaboration with Transnet, the interim PSP unit has developed the rail freight and port RFIs that are online today. As the RFI is part of a research and consultation process, all information submitted will be treated as confidential and used exclusively to inform the development of future projects. Participation in the RFI offers a valuable opportunity to help shape these future initiatives. The RFI must be completed online and can be accessed through the Department of Transport's website or directly at www.psp/rfi.org.za. The portal will remain open for 8 weeks, from the 24th of March to the 9th of May. Submitted responses will be reviewed and feedback will be provided. Following the conclusion of the RFI phase, the request for proposal will be undertaken through the PSP unit. The PSP unit and Transnet will develop the policy-aligned PSP program, which will enter the formal procurement phase at the end of August. This work is guided by the following principles. First of all reform in Transnet is in accordance with the Cabinet-approved roadmap for freight logistics. Secondly, to ensure a just transition to a reformed rail and port logistics system, prioritizing maximum job retention for employees at Transnet and PRASA, and in this regard we have set up a joint work stream to consult organized labor as the process unfolds. We will safeguard immovable assets by retaining them under the ownership of the state, for the benefit of future generations, and prevent the balkanization of the rail and port systems, as has occurred through reform projects in other countries. We will actively promote localization and industrialization and support for key sectors such as steel production and local rail manufacturing. We will demonstrate our commitment to broad-based Black economic empowerment and gender equality by providing strong support to new entrants and emerging players in the rail and port sectors, including small and medium enterprises. In closing, I encourage all interested and affected parties to actively engage in this RFI process, contributing to the PSP unit's efforts in shaping the potential private sector participation program of projects and designing future bid packages for procurement. In May 2025, the department will release the second batch of RFIs, which will be focused on passenger rail initiatives. It is my belief that working together, we will achieve more. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Minister. I believe we have to take some questions. I know that there is already a request, Minister, for a live crossing with one of the broadcasters. So some of the questions may be live, but let me check in the room. Do we have any questions? Let me just take one set of questions. See, there's a hand right there. Can I have another hand? Any indication? Maybe two hands. Okay, you can go ahead, just introduce yourself and the news outlet you represent. Go ahead.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm Patrick Rankomise. I'm from Anura Partners. And my question is twofold. One, having to do with the application requirements of the RFI, and then two, having to do with the kinds of entities that can respond to these bids. So the first question is to say, what are the requirements of responding to this RFI from the kind of entity and how they should respond? And secondly, what kind of entities can respond? By this I mean, can freight owners respond to the RFI? Can a consortium of freight owners respond? Or can a setup like, for instance, RBCT respond to this RFI? And lastly, does the response to the RFI influence the RFP bid? Are they related, or would they then be separate parts of the process? Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Any other question? Can I just check online, Vanessa? Do you have anything online?
There are no questions.
No. Okay. Lisa?
In response to your first question, the answer is yes. All of the types of entities that you have mentioned and any other interested or affected party can respond. The answer to your second question is also yes. The whole intention of putting out the RFI is so that we guide on the nature of future bids that would be informed by market appetite as well as other considerations that we will learn about through the RFI process. And I think that one of the things you would understand is that in the journey that we are traveling with Transnet, we've learned quite a lot about the independent power producer journey. And what we've learned about that journey is that because in certain instances there may not have been adequate research done before the launching of bid windows, many of those projects didn't reach financial close. So we want to make sure that we are guided by current reality in the rail environment and in the port environment as we work together with Transnet through our PSP unit to structure the future requests for proposals.
Thank you, Minister. Any other questions? Follow up?
First of all, thank you. And then one more question is, in response to the bids, are they taken considering full corridors, or can you have responses relative to parts of the corridor? Because I can imagine some freight owners or some entities have more information to give on parts of the corridors and less on the rest of the corridor.
I think the whole purpose of this is to allow for interested and affected parties to respond to any aspect of it. As you can see, it's very broad. And it's deliberately intended to be very broad and very comprehensive so that anyone and everyone who has an interest can participate in the process. And the DDG Rail was suggesting that if you look at the online application, you will see that there are forms there that spell out different kinds of entities that can apply and what kind of information we would be soliciting to guide us in our work.
Okay, thank you so much. I suppose that's your last follow-up. I see there's an online question. Vanessa, you can go ahead.
There's one question from Lanis Omaji from News24. Do the proposed infrastructure projects link up with the credit guarantee vehicle to be launched by Treasury to encourage private sector involvement?
Can I just check in the room? Any question? We're drawing to a close. Suppose if there isn't any follow-up from online, Minister, you can take that one. If there isn't any follow-up online, then we're going to have to bring it to a close.
The answer to Lamisa's question is also yes. I'm sure, Colin, you're going to be releasing these notes, and there's also a note to editors that talks about how Transnet itself could be financing infrastructure development, including applications to the National Treasury budget facility for infrastructure. So it's possible that we could go with a blended approach that includes both public and private sector financing.
Thank you, Minister. I guess, colleagues, that brings us to the end of the press conference. Once again, I do want to detain you, Minister, where you're sitting. Those who would want to do the one-on-ones, if they can remain, and the rest of us, if we can leave the room so that there isn't too much noise as we do the one-on-ones. Members of the media, once again, I would like to thank you for attending the press conference. This brings us to the end. Again, I would like to thank you for attending the press conference. This brings us to the end.